Hello and good afternoon. My name's James Rostance and this is the 414 Live for you as a professional B2B marketer, whether you work in-house at a company or agency side, or indeed if you're a company executive who has a hands-on role in your company's sales and marketing activities, so that between all of you, you can directly expand and enhance your professional knowledge with every single episode. And I do that, or rather, you can do that rather, because I speak with some of the greatest and most interesting minds in B2B marketing every single week. And this week, we're going to be diving into the world of conversion science, which is quite a cool one. So welcome along then. If this is the first time you've joined us, or if you haven't already subscribed, web address on screen, www.the414.net. Subscribe there, where you can also check out previous episodes later on. But for now, we're going to cross live to Austin, Texas, where waiting live on the line right now, please welcome Mr. Brian Massey. Good morning to you over in Austin.
Good morning to you.
Yes, we got there. When we did the live show, so we were a few minutes late today, and I think we were about 20 seconds away from having the whole thing cancelled by all the IT systems. So we did very well. But yeah, we've got a beautiful picture. Yeah, I know, right? Sort of like the equivalent of bomb defusal, except with a B2B marketing show. Nice. So yeah, thank you ever so much for making time this morning. Brian, your complete specialism is in conversion science, and I absolutely love that you've got the official white coat of scientific awesomeness on right there. That gives me confidence that everything you're going to be sharing today is going to be top notch. I know this already, but yeah, for a visual cue, I think that's very important. So look, let's dive right into it if that's okay. So my first question, in which case, is what exactly is conversion science, and why don't they teach it along with physics and chemistry in school?
Well, I'll answer the second one first, as they do teach it.
Really?
They do teach the scientific method, and that is really what conversion science is.
Awesome.
We define conversion science as getting the most value from every visitor to your website. And value can be measured in terms of somebody who's not a good fit for you going away, somebody who is a good fit for you maybe joining a list, or of course, if you're selling something or generating qualified leads on the web, doing that valuable conversion in which they become a prospect or a customer in your business. The process we follow is gather some data, come up with a hypothesis, figure out a way to test that hypothesis. Our goal is to prove it wrong, by the way, not prove it right. Run the test, look at the results, and then see what you learned.
I really like that. That's a proper scientific method right there as well, seeking to disprove your theory. Can you remind me, what's the thinking behind that, about seeking to disprove a concept rather than seeking to prove it? What's the benefits of that approach?
Oh my gosh, we could get into so much around science denials. People think that science runs out and collects the data that proves how things work. All science does really is it comes up with a concept and then it disproves that. And so once you've eliminated all, so you test it this way, it still holds. You test it this way, it still holds. Once you've eliminated everything that would disprove it, what you're left with is probably the truth. But we never actually get to that point where we're absolutely sure, because it's just the nature of reality. So that we are always testing what's called the null hypothesis, the hypothesis that our idea is false.
I love that, the null hypothesis. I've not heard that term before, but I do love the approach of science in this regard, where you're kind of doing the opposite to what you might otherwise expect. But then I guess that in itself is the beauty and strength then in science and a scientific approach to everything. Nicely done. Hey.
Yeah, the thing that kills us when we're developing websites and campaigns is this mass, this 2.5 to 3 pound mass of biases we keep between our ears. And the scientific method is designed to get that out of the way so that we're not making decisions based on what we think is right, or stereotypes, or confirmation bias, in which we only accept evidence that supports what we already believe. Scientists realize we're humans and we've got to get past this, and we have the same problem in marketing.
And that's not a new thing either, is it? This has been going on for ages. Because I appreciate conscious bias is a term that's being used a lot these days, but this is age-old actual scientific methods. Nice, thanks.
Yeah. Mhm.
Regular friend and viewer of the show, Hey Gamdan, he's given this a solid thumbs up already, saying an interesting, a different topic, but interesting. Thumbs up. Got to get the order correctly there. Thank you, Gamdan. Appreciate that. Well, we're certainly going to deliver on that for you today. So what exactly is it that you set out to monitor the conversions of? And for complete clarity, what is the end goal?
Well, that's a very good question. So people engage in conversion optimization usually because they are having trouble converting the traffic that they're getting, or they can't get any more keywords on their paid search campaigns, or their social media campaigns have stopped working. Or the site's just not performing well, and everybody looks at it and says it looks old, it looks dated, or a new VP comes in and he or she needs to make a significant change, and the website's always fair game for a big project. So they come in really looking for more performance. We want more sales from the traffic we're already getting. We want a higher conversion rate is the most basic way of looking at that. So ultimately, we're looking at how many more transactions for an e-commerce site we can generate, or can we generate more revenue per transaction on a lead generation site, the business to business world? How many demos, consultations, white paper downloads, webinar registrations are we generating with our campaigns? And in the SaaS world, it's how many triers, how many buyers can we get? So that's really the bottom line. And there's a bit of a danger in correlating, for instance, reducing the bounce rate, or increasing the time on site, or increasing the number of pages per visit. All of these things can be predictive of conversion, but they're not always. Sometimes when you keep people on the site longer, it means you've confused them more, and your conversion rates will actually go down. So ultimately, we want to optimize for that business building conversion event.
Nice. You know what? You've unknowingly led beautifully on to my third question, by the way, there, which is what are the problems with the way that most marketers cover or deal with monitoring conversions?
Well, I mean, the biggest problem is they don't. So
Sure.
if you are a marketer in a digital space and you are not comfortable with analytics, and there's amazing free analytics packages from Google, there are amazing tools from Adobe for the enterprise, there are analytics packages for apps, there are analytics packages that are easier and harder to set up, but they all boil down to you need to go in with some questions and know how to answer your questions in analytics. So you have a landing page for a demo. Sign up for a free demo. It isn't performing that well. Is it because the traffic's not right, or there's not enough traffic? So can you go into analytics and look at the data on that page and figure out if the conversion rate is actually low or high, or if it's the traffic? And if the conversion rate is low, then that tells you can be doing some things on that page to improve it.
Spot on. Okay. By the way, for everyone watching and listening right now, if you have a question that you'd like to put to, we'll call you Dr. Brian from today onwards. If there's a question that you'd like to put to Dr. Brian, then please do.
I do not have a doctorate. I am a scientist, but I do not have a doctorate. So.
The University of James has just decided you've got an honorary degree right here.
Honorary doctorate. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, live questions to Dr. Brian right here, and he will actually give you a serious answer. That yes, I'm sure you'll. Right. So, what then in that case is your take on optimizing conversions and the way in which they should be done? So, your particular approach to conversion optimization science.
Yeah. So people think that conversion optimizers are all about testing. But the real work comes in selecting the ideas to test. So we really deal in ideas. So you have ideas, you look at a page and you say, oh, this is too cluttered, or I think the copy could be better, or the images aren't right. You have ideas, and each of those is a hypothesis. If anyone on your team or some of the executives in the company look at the page, they're going to come up with some of their own ideas. I always joke about the CEO's wife choosing the color scheme for the website.
That sounds like
If
that's
you
more
go and
of
look in
that sounds like that's probably more of a real thing than simply a passing joke, though. Is that something that you had to deal with in the past?
yeah, it's not common. It's not common.
Isn't it?
So I don't want to. I
Okay.
don't want to.
Okay.
I don't want to cast CEOs as irresponsible or anything. They're normally very smart people.
Indeed. All right.
But if you go and look at the analytics, you'll begin to see, oh, this page has a high exit rate, or people aren't getting past this step in the registration process, or people aren't getting past this step in the checkout process. And then there are these fantastic tools. I mean, we're in a golden age of data. It is very inexpensive to collect data. For instance, heat map reports, where you're seeing where people are scrolling, what they're clicking on, where their mouse is moving, which is often correlated with what they're reading. So you can go and actually look at how people are interacting with the page, your people coming to your campaign or coming to your website, how they're interacting with the page and where the problems might be. So that will generate some more ideas. We need to make this clickable. We need to move this thing higher on the page. So you pretty quickly end up with a long list of all of which are good ideas for improving conversion rate. You're going to be wrong on at least half of them. Actually, we'll be wrong on half of them. You'll probably be wrong on 3/4 of them because we do this all the time. And that's just the nature of your audience. It's different from anybody else's. So the process is going through the list and deciding which of those ideas it's probably not an issue. So you look at the evidence that you have, you look at how difficult it would be to test. Sometimes we'll eliminate ideas just because they're too difficult to test. And you end up with what's left at the top of this ranked list is the best ideas for experimentation. And you can experiment using user testing, you can experiment using A/B testing, and this is the root of the scientists, is how good of an experimenter are they? Can they find some existing data that would support that idea, or do they have to go and collect some new data? But it's all about the ideas and managing those.
Indeed. Are there any other hidden benefits, maybe, of taking this approach to strategically and scientifically increase conversions?
Yeah.
There are. Okay, right. Let's do that.
Yeah, I think so. We typically will be hired by a client to improve the conversion rate, but they continue working with us for other reasons. As a marketer, one of the challenges we have is managing other people's opinions, and especially if those people are our bosses who write our paychecks, it becomes very tempting to let them come in with an idea and we say, oh, that's a great idea. We'll test that next. Mm-hmm. Well, when you can, we'll implement that right away. But when you have data behind you, you can say, well, we did this user testing, we did this copy testing, we've had this page running and here are the results. You can say, we have data that says this implementation is the best implementation, and a good executive or a good team member will say, okay, great. Usually decision makers try to fill gaps when they feel like there's not enough information. And if you have the data, it'll manage those conversations better. And the same thing goes with agencies or your internal design and development team. When they come to you and say, here are 3 options, pick the one that you want us to design with, your answer should be no. Why don't you go collect some data and tell me which of those 3 is most likely to perform best? This changes the conversation, especially when you're like, get creative back that you're not comfortable with. Let's collect some data and make sure that this is actually going to work. So those relationships become transformed by data. As I said, as a marketer, you need to know these tools. As a digital marketer, you have to be an experimenter because it is so cheap to collect the data, so inexpensive, and it doesn't take a lot of time to run these experiments that we're to the point where you're really not going to be able to advance in your career unless you have these skills. So I think it's very helpful for the career. My favorite, though, is that it creates a safety net for creative ideas. So we're halfway through the year. Many of your listeners are behind on their quarterly goals or their yearly goals. So they start to get safe. Like let's repeat something that worked last year. Let's not take too many chances. But if you can collect some data around some big ideas, let's change the way we're presenting our value proposition on this page, or let's lead with this one aspect of our product or offering instead of trying to list them all. These are somewhat risky ideas, but if you can run them through a test and see just how risky they are, you might be really onto something that's going to change your fortunes. And so the data allows us to try these crazier ideas. And that's why we got into marketing. We want to communicate. We want to change hearts and minds, really. So as an experimenter, you get to do that. We steal ideas. That's, I think, the core of this conversation is steal like a scientist.
Yes. In fact, yeah, I was going to ask.
Don't just take ideas.
I was going to ask at some point, could you provide clarity for anyone that's not familiar with the expression, why stealing like a scientist is a thing, or maybe a good thing, and what to maybe make of that as an experiment?
Yeah. So, for example, we have a couple of years, it's been about a year or two, we've come out of the era of the carousel hero area, in which every page had a carousel that rotated through with different offers or different features. And it's basically marketers saying, I can't really decide which of these things is most important, so I'm going to put them all in there. But it turns out that implementation very often reduced conversion rate. But everyone was doing it. So they were stealing ideas from competitors and implementing those, but they didn't know if it worked. Today we've got hero area videos, and this increases the load time of your page. It creates motion, which distracts the reader from reading the copy that's on the page. So it has downsides as well. When you steal like a scientist, you take that idea and you add it to this idea list that I was talking about. You do some research, you see how important that idea is in relation to the other ideas you have on the list. And then you devise, if it's high on the list, you devise an experiment that would allow you to test that idea. That's stealing like a scientist. If it's not working for your competitors, great, but you don't want to pull it over onto your site and have it not work for you too.
Yes. I don't know if it's an American thing, but certainly it's a common expression in Britain. That's what you described is the case of the blind leading the blind, where they've seen something. Yeah, okay, yeah, where they've seen something that works and they've blindly copied it. Whereas, right, sure, great definition. That scientists are intelligent in what they steal and give it thought first, steal it, and then make sure that it is the right thing to be stealing or borrowing is a term using copywriting for or modeling.
Let me drill down on that word intelligent a little bit, because we are all already wired for this. We already know how to compare two things and minimize variables, and we do it in our daily shopping. Whenever you look at you're looking at a product and it's got a 5-star rating, but it only has 5 reviews, you're understanding sample size natively. So it's not a question of intelligence. It's a question more of probably discipline, just using what you know about how to evaluate ideas and choices that you're making, using your natural, God-given, the best part of your brain, not the biased part of your brain.
Okay, yes, I really like that. You know what, you touched on something just before this, which is the part of dealing with agencies. I really like this. So you were saying that normally an agency would come up with 3 options for the creative and tell you to, to choose one of the 3 options. But you are very clear there in coming up with a nice alternative, which is where you challenge them back to say, that's nice, but could you come up with some initial data to support the proposals that you're putting forwards? How much of a difference do you find that makes, and how common is that? Because I've never heard of that.
It is not common. Most agencies, even today, even the big creative agencies, if you ask them to do that, they will look at you like you have 3 arms, because they're not doing that. What they're probably going to do is pick up the phone and call us. And so they're not doing it. And I mean, we've been well trained by the Mad Men style of design, in which Don Draper strolls into the conference room looking hot, sits down, and then expounds upon his idea. And the client's like, oh, Don likes this. And then that goes into production. Don's a smart guy, but he's got that same brain in his head the rest of us do. And that's the way we've been trained to do it. Count on us. We have this portfolio of beautiful websites, so you know that we can design beautiful websites. But the question you have to be asking is, are you designing effective websites? Beauty is important. Beauty lends itself to credibility and authority. The design's important. But once you get past that hurdle, are you designing pages that draw the reader's eyes to the important information? And are your calls to action very clear and at the right points? And all of the things that go into making campaigns just soar.
Indeed. Didn't you earlier also, when talking about yourself in coming up with ideas and concepts, that you said that your own ideas are only at best 25% correct? It was something along those lines. Could you just recap that? Because I want to put this in relation to quantifying how right or wrong, for example, an agency might be with these creatives.
I think what I said, and I really don't have any data to back this up. Well, I don't have a lot of data to back this up. An A/B testing tool did an analysis of all the tests and found that only 1 in 7 was a winner. Only 1 in 7 showed that the design change would actually improve conversion rates. We think we are much better than that. But ultimately, it doesn't matter whether if we come up with 100 ideas for a landing page and we're wrong on half of them or we're wrong on 75% of them, I can tell you this, we will find out which half and which 25% are the winners. If half of them are right, then we'll have more winners. But we have the process that allows us to find those winners. And that's the value of an experimenter, is finding those ideas that will actually improve things. So it doesn't matter so much how good we are at that initial list. We want to put everything on that list. It's the discipline of finding the ones that are valuable. That's our talent, I guess you would say.
Right. So as we're kind of diving into this, it's making me certainly appreciate right now that were you to have 3 options to choose from, the odds of all of those 3 being absolute winners, and you're simply choosing based on what you would like, is kind of impossible. The fact that you've got 3 definite winners. So
it's not. So
no?
let's take that as just a real quick example. So what we would do is we would take those 3 mock-ups, we would take them to a service such as Usability Hub or Helio, and we would do either a question test, which asks a panel of people to come and read the page and answer some questions, or a 5-second test, which they see it for 5 seconds and then they have to, from memory, answer some questions. So this helps us understand which of those is communicating the most clearly, which is drawing the eye to the important pieces of the message, either within 5 seconds or as the user is interacting with those things. And this sort of data is small sample size, so you might find all 3 are in the ballpark, and that's good data to know. It's kind of like insurance. We don't call when a design doesn't win over the control, we don't call it a loss. We call it a save, especially if there's a decrease in the conversion rate. Because if you had launched that, you would have decreased your conversion rate. Well, we saved you from that pain. So that data will often happen is one of those 3 will fall below, and it's just not a good implementation for communication. And then the remaining 2 become good candidates for an A/B test or a higher, putting more people through and evaluating those to see if you can tease out which of those is most effective. So that's just a little experiment that can be done from your desk using these services that bring the people to evaluate your designs, and it's like a buck or 2 per person, and you can have 100 people look at each of those and not spend much money.
But money well invested, no doubt. With you. Okay. Would it be okay then to ask, could you talk us through the process that you like to take to set about testing, for example, a new landing page?
Sure. Well, the first thing we want to do is see how it's performing. So if it's let's assume that this is an existing page that's been getting data. We'll put some heat map tracking software on there and session recording software. So we're going to watch people enter the experience. They're purchasing an e-commerce product and going through purchase. We want to watch them do that and see where they're having trouble. There are services that will bring people to walk through it, and they'll be on video talking about what their experience is as they go through it. And they're just going to be these palm to forehead moments where you're like, I can't believe that's how they're interpreting that message, or I can't believe that we forgot to put that key piece of information on the page. So that's a great way to start collecting these ideas. We'll do a heuristic. So we've got a playbook for how landing pages work in different industries and what sorts of tests we've run that have resulted in wins. Every audience is different, so you can't just take best practices. Like I said, even steal from yourself like a scientist. So we go through the heuristic and we make note of things that we think from a best practices standpoint will work, but those go on the list. And then in analytics, we'll see what the bounce rate is, how many people are interacting. So if it's a high bounce rate, that actually is an indicator that the traffic isn't right. So there might be some things that we want to do on the traffic generating side. The heat map reports will tell us where people are clicking, how far they're scrolling. And so all of this comes together to generate all of these ideas. And it also is data that supports those ideas. So if there is evidence in analytics and in heat map reports, and we had a user video that showed that there was a problem, that idea rises higher on the list and may be one of the first things that we test. We prefer to test one idea at a time. So better headline, just test that. Better image, just test that. Longer copy, just test that. Change the call to action, just test that. But sometimes, given the traffic that we have, we'll take bigger swings in which we'll integrate a number of those ideas into a design and see if we can get into a better ballpark. When I want to sound smart, I say we want to get to a better local maxima. I'm not going to bother to explain that. Just assume that I'm smart. So sometimes we'll do that, but more likely we'll have several ideas for how to revise that page, take those to those user tests like I described earlier, and see which of those is doing the best job, and then optimize that on a per element basis. So is that clear?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, you know what? Bounce rates. I just wanted to get some complete clarity on that. Is a high bounce rate or a low bounce rate good, and how do you quantify that? So this is, yeah. Could you just?
Oh yeah. So the bounce rate is the number of people that come to the page and then leave without visiting another page or interacting with anything on the page. So blog pages have a naturally high bounce rate because people come, they read the article, and they leave. We also can gauge the bounce rate by how long people are on the page. If we set up analytics in a certain way, we can, somebody who stays for more than 15 seconds is not considered a bounce. But if people are coming to the page and immediately pogo sticking back to the search results page to find the next thing, then either they're not the right visitor, or they clearly see that they're not in the right place, or your page hasn't immediately communicated to them that they're in the right place. And so they're going to go back and find something that's familiar. And we see this a lot when ads drive to landing pages, and the landing pages doesn't repeat the offer that was in the ad, just a simple break there. Sometimes those things can cause high bounce rates. But in general, we don't optimize for bounce rate because it's a bit of a loose metric, and it doesn't always correlate. A lower bounce rate, which means people are staying longer, doesn't correlate to a higher conversion rate in many, many situations.
All right. I like that. Well, how about this, Brian? I'll call this up. Here we go. Adam Lach-Zerma, I hope I've got your name right there, Adam. He's got a good comment. He says, I've seen some great creative that has fallen through the gaps in user testing, and how these are set up can appear false. So environment and intentions have to clear and run well. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So we have a natural, as I said, a natural ability to understand data. And what he's pointing at is the fact that if you're bringing creative to user test panel, these are not your customers. They're having to pretend that they're your customers. So if you're selling HR management software, you're going to have a hard time asking questions that have anything to do with the actual product. You really have to ask questions about, what does this company sell? Does this company seem credible? If you wanted to take action on this page, what would you click on? Do you remember any of the specifics of the offer on this page? So he's right there. That data is less reliable than the analytics data or the heat map data, which is your prospects coming to your website and interacting with your pages. That's more reliable. So you do have to take that with a grain of salt. If you have three options and two are 20 or 30, one's 20 or 30% better, that's probably not enough of a difference for you to say, oh, that's clearly better. If one is twice as good, if the people in that user's research were getting the answers right 100% more often than the control, now you're saying like this one is not statistically, but this is the one we should take to test. At least go and experiment with this design more. So his instinct is right. All of your instincts will be right about this. Trust me on this, that you don't want to make final decisions based on low sample size, non-user data. You want to use it to guide you in your experimentation.
Okay. Nice. Cool. Thank you for that. I don't appreciate it. So how about this? What would you say are some of your favorite examples of conversion optimization processes well implemented?
Well, so well implemented means that I think the primary thing is that you're not deciding what to create experiments around or to take to A/B tests, it's the best data, but it's also the most expensive because it can only be tested on your existing traffic. Avoiding the brainstorm. So oftentimes there'll be a brainstorm meeting and everybody will get together and talk about things that can be tested, and then you pick something as a group. Instead, take those ideas from the brainstorm, put them on your list, and then go look in analytics to see if you can find evidence. Go look at the heat maps to see if you can find evidence. We think that we should put a scheduler on this landing page instead of a form for instance, a demo request or a free consultation. Let them go ahead and schedule the time rather than fill out a form and follow up with them. So that's an idea that seems like a great idea to go out and A/B test, but you first want to go and see, are we doing a good job of getting people who complete that form into consultations? And if you are, then you're like, maybe that's not really a problem. So you do a little research on the back end before you try it, but it's a great idea. So you may end up taking that to an A/B test, but you're doing it in the context of the other things you could be testing on that page. Improve the copy, make the call to action stronger, improve the offer, talk less about your product and more about the actual consultation. Some of those things are easier to implement, and in our playbook have shown to increase things in that, for instance, the B2B space.
With you. Okay, nice. Well, getting buy-in for any new concept is something I'm particularly interested in, and I think it's a great thing to be able to cover for everyone watching. So what would you advise for a marketer who wants to go down the road of doing, well, either starting off with doing a better job with conversions, or upping their game to get to like professional level, the real in-depth stuff that you were talking about? What would you advise for how to get buy-in from with all of that?
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to personify this a little bit. So whenever we're designing a landing page or a website, we have 4 broad areas of visitors. And these come from an excellent book by Brian and Jeffrey Eisenberg called Waiting for Your Cat to Bark. And that might be one of the first books that you want to get if you're not used to it. But methodicals will probably want to take a course. My friend Pep Laya has a fantastic conversion optimization mini degree. So people who want to get in, study, understand all of the things, that would be a great place to start. The competitives, these are people who really want to understand what's in it for them. They might start Googling some things. Hopefully they will find the Conversion Sciences website, read some of those articles. They're more likely, though, to jump in. If you find that you're a spontaneous type, I'm this type, where you just need to get in and start playing with stuff, I would start looking at Usability Hub. I would get Crazy Egg or Hotjar and put it on my own website and start looking at these heat map reports and start seeing how people are interacting with my site. Just dive into the data. I would dive into Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics and just go through each report so that you understand what kind of data is being collected and what sorts of questions you'll be able to answer going down the road. And then the humanist. So the humanists are about relationships. Here you might want to hire an agency or a coach, someone to help you with it, someone to kind of be a partner. Maybe you can team with someone in your organization. So these are 4 great ways to get started, and we're all a little bit different. But conversion optimization involves copy, it can involve video, layout, design. Anything can improve your conversion rates. So start with where you're comfortable. If you're a designer, you might start by researching and understanding how simple changes in the way you lay out a page can significantly improve its readability and your conversion rates. If you're into video, then maybe you should test some short videos on some of your landing pages. Start with where you are. Anything can be experimented with. And actually, the experimentation makes it more fun. So have fun.
Love that as a concept. How about this then? So, what would you like the audience to have as a core takeaway from all of this today? And maybe at the same time, touching upon a real reason for caring about this and being motivated to see this through.
So the 2 big themes that I have is that you don't have to be a lab coat wearing scientist to do this. And, we award lab coats to our customers and partners when they reach that level of where they start naturally asking like, oh, do we have some data on this? Could we collect some data on this? And we're talking about high school dropouts. We're talking about Russian literature majors. You have the natural ability to do this, and you don't have to be a scientist. So I think most importantly, embracing that is number 1. Beyond, I'm trying to get my own bias. I'm like, other than that, dive into some tools and try them. But I know that not everybody learns that way. I think that we need to look at the current design process as wrong, as broken. And I know that is just not going to be popular. 90% of website redesigns are still done where they spend 6 months changing everything and they push it out and they just hope. But by that time, there's plenty of scapegoats and finger pointing candidates where, everybody's going to be off the hook. It just didn't work. We did our best. We're not buying that. So getting some experimentation in there. Real quick story. One of our clients had been working with us for 4 years, said, it's time for us to redesign the site. We need to open it up. We need support. There were some technical reasons why they needed to redesign the site. We actually did the entire site redesign in a testing tool before we made any changes on the back end. And we compared their old site to a completely redesigned site. And our goal was just insurance. We just didn't want to lower the conversion. We didn't want to give back all these wins we'd had over the years. And we were fortunate to find a 13% increase in revenue with the new design. So yay. And so then they were able to go and completely redesign the site. So that was one test. We had a lot of learnings to base that on, but this is the way you need to be thinking about changes in your strategy. And then last of all, test some crazy value propositions, test some crazy leads for your landing pages, try some crazy stuff. If you collect the data, the cost is relatively small. You see this isn't working, you close it down and move on to something else. But you're going to stumble onto those things that'll really differentiate you in the market. And that is the most exciting thing to me.
Love it. That was a perfect thing to finish on, by the way. Yes, along with everything else, to do something a little bit crazy, just give it a test, because it might actually work. Nice. Well, before we wrap things up, Brian, how can people get in contact with you and, initiate a conversation if they would so like to do so?
Yeah, I would welcome them to visit our website, conversionsciences.com. If we've done a good job on our website, and we do feel a little cobbler's children sometimes about the website, but they should be able to understand the sorts of services we offer. And if it makes sense for them to reach out, there should be plenty of opportunities. There's loads of information. So we go to market by teaching. We've got some fantastic lead magnets. We call them lead magnets because that generates leads, but I actually think the content is really helpful. 110 e-commerce ideas. We've got a 21-point copywriting guide. So I would go and look for those things as well. That would be the best place. And if they want to send an email to me, I'm happy to provide that in the show notes, or just send it to brian@conversionsciences.com.
Boom, right there. Well, Brian, this has been really good and actually very valuable as well. So, well, hey, Mr. Brian Massey live at 100%. Mr. Brian Massey live from Austin, Texas, this Friday morning over in the US. It's Friday afternoon here in the UK. Brian, thank you ever so much for joining me today.
I'm so glad you had me.
Thank you. Hey, and if you've enjoyed today's show, then please make sure you're signed up to the show. www.the414.net is where you can sign up for the weekly email and for all other subscription options. It's available on every single podcast channel you can possibly think of. And on Apple, you can even get the video podcast, which is cool. So when you're commuting, because we're back to doing that again, which is nice, you can watch the video version of the show as well. And also at the414.net is previous... all the previous episodes. This today, I believe, is number 83. So you've got a bit of catching up to do if you're new to the show. If you're a regular, though, thank you very much for sticking with us. This is it's really appreciated. And yes, I sincerely hope you've learned some great stuff today. I certainly have. Well, once again, and this is always good as part of doing this. It's good fun. Well, hey, look. The 414, it's for you as a professional B2B marketer, for you to directly expand and enhance your professional knowledge every single week when I speak with some of the greatest and most interesting minds in B2B marketing from across the world. There we go. All right. Well, my name's James Rostance, and I'll see you here same time next week.